Let me tell you about the weirdest, creepiest thing that ever happened to me. This all went down in the summer of 2017, right after I finished college. I was broke, tired, and honestly just desperate to get out of my parents' house. I'd landed a part-time job at a bookstore in a quiet little town called Pine Hollow. Not exactly a dream career, but it paid just enough to afford a cheap place. The problem was every apartment around there was either too expensive or completely falling apart. Just when I was about to give up, I found this listing online. Room available in a 2-bedroom apartment. Fully furnished. Cheap rent. Quiet area. Sounded perfect. Almost too perfect. I messaged the guy and he replied almost right away. His name was Joel and he said the room was ready if I wanted to move in that weekend. I was a little hesitant. Something about his messages felt kind of robotic. But I was desperate, so I shrugged it off and said yes. That Saturday I drove out to Pine Hollow and pulled up to the building. It was older. One of those square gray concrete buildings that probably hadn't been updated since the 80s. But it looked clean, and the neighborhood seemed quiet. Joel met me at the front door. He was tall, skinny, and had this weirdly stiff way of standing, like he didn't know what to do with his arms. He spoke softly with a thick Eastern European accent. Romanian, maybe. He didn't smile much, just nodded a lot and kept saying, yes, yes, of course, whenever I asked something. The room I'd be staying in was already furnished, just like the listing said. Twin bed, wooden dresser, small closet, a little desk, and a beat-up old TV on a stand in the corner. Nothing fancy, but totally fine for what I needed. But here's the part that threw me off. On top of the dresser were a bunch of stuffed animals, like a lot of them. There was a rabbit with droopy ears, a smiling frog, a cartoonish-looking dinosaur, and then right in the middle was this big, worn-out teddy bear. Brown fur, slightly matted, with black glassy eyes that looked straight at the bed. I laughed a little and asked, "So, what's with the toys?" Joel let out a weird laugh, too loud for how quiet he usually was. "Oh, yes. The landlord puts them in every room. It is tradition for comfort." I gave a polite smile but felt uneasy. "Right, okay." He told me it was best not to move them. "Leave them. The landlord is particular." I didn't ask questions. I was tired and it was already starting to get dark, so I just unpacked my clothes and set up my laptop. Joel stayed in his room most of the time. I barely saw him after the initial tour. That night I laid in bed watching something on my laptop and I thought I heard a soft click. It was a weird sound, like a switch being flipped or maybe a tiny shutter. I paused my video and listened. Nothing. Probably just the building settling, I figured. Old buildings always have strange noises. I went back to my show and eventually fell asleep. The next day, Joel was gone. I had no idea where he went. His door was open and the place was completely quiet. I made some coffee, read a bit, and tried to relax. That night, though, things got weird. I was changing into my pajamas, standing near the dresser, when I heard that sound again. Click. This time, there was no mistaking it. It was clear right behind me, like something electronic turning on. I spun around, heart jumping, but saw nothing unusual. The teddy bear was still sitting there, staring. I picked it up and turned it around in my hands. Just a regular stuffed animal. No wires sticking out, no battery pack, nothing. I set it back down and tried not to think about it. The next morning, Joel was back. He was sitting at the kitchen table drinking tea when I walked in. He looked up and said, "How's the book?" I froze. "What?" "The book you were reading last night," he said calmly. "You like horror?" I hadn't told him I was reading. I hadn't even left the book out. It was under my bed. I gave a nervous laugh. How did you know I was reading?" He shrugged. "I had to get something from your room. Saw it then, that felt off." He never asked to go into my room, and there was no reason for him to. "Please don't go in my room when I'm not there," I said as casually as I could manage. He didn't say anything, just nodded. Of course. That night I couldn't sleep. My heart kept racing. I kept looking at that bear on the dresser. I wanted to throw it out the window, but part of me was scared of what that might trigger. I stayed up trying to read, but I couldn't focus. Around 1 a.m. I heard footsteps outside my door. Slow, careful steps. They stopped right at my door. Then click, the same soft electronic noise, but louder now. I grabbed my flashlight, got out of bed, and walked straight to the dresser. I picked up the bear, turned it toward the light, and looked straight into its face, and that's when I saw it. One of its eyes wasn't a regular button eye. It was a small black lens, a camera lens. I dropped the bear like it was on fire. Heart pounding, I grabbed my phone and took a picture. Then I ran to Joel's door and tried to open it. It was locked. I knocked hard. "Joel! Open the door!" No answer. I knocked louder. "I know what's in the bear." Silence. Then I saw it. The light under his door flickered and went dark. He turned it off. He was there, hiding. I ran back to my room, locked the door, even though it was a flimsy lock, and called the landlord. I told him everything, the camera, the stuffed animals. The weird roommate, he just sighed and said, "You're not the first to call me about Joel." That made my blood run cold. He said I could leave without penalty and that I should do so tonight. Didn't have to tell me twice. I grabbed everything I could carry, shoved it in my trunk, and left the building in the middle of the night. I didn't even bother to check if Joel came out of his room. I just got in the car and drove. The landlord never followed up. Never asked for money, nothing. Sometimes I wonder what he meant when he said I wasn't the first. How many people had lived in that room? How many had found the camera? How many hadn't? Now anytime I see a stuffed animal, especially a bear, I get this tight feeling in my chest. Doesn't matter if it's at a toy store or sitting on someone's couch. I have to turn it around so it's not facing me, just in case. Because ever since that summer, I can't shake the feeling that somewhere someone is still watching and maybe still recording. So this happened back in 2022, right after we moved into this quiet little town called Brook Hollow. It's one of those places that looks like it was pulled out of a postcard. Neat lawns, friendly mailmen, kids riding bikes, that kind of thing. My family had just settled into our new house at the end of a cul-de-sac, and things felt pretty normal. First, one night, maybe 2 weeks after we moved in, our new neighbors invited us over for a backyard barbecue. They lived right next door. A couple named Mr. and Mrs. Dalton and their teenage son, Owen, my Uncle Jeff, my Aunt Lisa, and I'm Emma, by the way. Went over around 8 p.m. It was already dark, but their backyard was lit up with string lights and that soft yellow glow that makes you feel cozy. The Daltons were polite, but kind of strange. Mr. Dalton seemed friendly enough. He cracked a few dad jokes, offered us burgers, and talked about how peaceful the neighborhood was. Mrs. Dalton didn't say much. She smiled, but it never really reached her eyes, you know. And then there was Owen. Owen didn't talk at all, not once. He just stood around the edge of the yard, kind of swaying side to side, his eyes never really focused on anything. Except me. I caught him staring at me several times. And not just a normal stare. His eyes were wide and glassy, like he was watching something no one else could see. It made my skin crawl. At one point I tried to smile at him just to be polite. He didn't smile back. He didn't even blink. I quickly looked away and kept my eyes on my plate after that. Eventually, the adults got into one of those long conversations about property taxes or something equally boring, so I pretended to need to use the bathroom and slipped back to our house. I just wanted to be anywhere but there. The next morning I walked to school. Brook Hollow High was only a few blocks away, so I didn't mind. It was still early, the sky gray with that sleepy morning haze. I was halfway down the block when I passed Dalton's house. Out of instinct, I glanced over. That's when I saw it. Someone, I swear it was Owen, was standing behind one of the trees in their front yard. But he wasn't just standing there. He was peeking out from behind it like he was hiding from me. The second I looked, he ducked back behind the tree. I tried to shake it off. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe he was just outside for fresh air. But something about the way he moved, fast like he got caught, really unsettled me. I kept walking. My pace picked up a little. I made it another block before I turned to check again. And there he was, Owen. Crouched low in a bush across the street, his long brown hair falling over his face, his eyes locked on me like he'd been tracking my every step. No smile, no expression, just that blank, eerie stare. I didn't run, but I walked fast. Like really fast. I made it to school and didn't stop thinking about it all day. When I got home, I told my uncle and aunt everything. They looked concerned, but not the way I expected. They weren't freaking out, I just kind of confused. Uncle Jeff said he'd talk to Mr. Dalton about it. So he did. Later that evening, he came back and told me not to worry. He said the Daltons explained that Owen had some special needs and wasn't always aware of how he came across. Basically, they brushed it off. And so did Uncle Jeff. He told me to be kind and not to take it personally, but following someone to school, hiding in bushes, that's not something you ignore. That evening, I tried to relax on the back patio with some homework. The sun was going down, casting long shadows across the yard. It was quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that presses in on your ears and makes every little sound feel louder. I don't know why I looked up when I did, but I suddenly glanced toward the Daltons' house. There's just one window on the side that faces our backyard, and Owen was there sitting in the window, watching me. He wasn't doing anything else. Just sitting there completely still, his eyes locked on me. His face pale, mouth slightly open. The moment he saw me looking, he vanished behind the curtain. I grabbed my books and ran inside. Once again, I told my aunt and uncle. And once again, they told me to be understanding. He probably doesn't realize he's scaring you, Aunt Lisa said. I didn't argue, but inside I knew something wasn't right. That night, I stayed up late texting friends and scrolling through videos. Around 1 a.m., I finally put my phone down and rolled over to sleep. Then I heard it. A soft click. It came from the window. My heart jumped into my throat. I froze. I didn't even turn my head at first. I just listened. Click. Then, the soft sliding sound of the window inching open. I whipped around and saw the window slowly creeping upward. My brain barely had time to register what was happening before I screamed. I screamed so loud I thought my throat would tear. Aunt Lisa and Uncle Jeff came bursting into the room. I was already backed up against the wall, pointing at the window. Someone was climbing through. The lights flicked on, and there he was, Owen, standing halfway through my window, one leg inside, the other dangling out, in his hand a knife. Not a little one. A big kitchen knife, shiny and sharp and horrifying. He looked wild. His hair was a mess. His shirt was stained. His eyes were empty, like he wasn't fully there. Uncle Jeff pulled me out of the room. Aunt Lisa grabbed her phone and called 911 while yelling for Owen to stop. We all ran next door, pounded on the Daltons' door like mad. Mr. Dalton came out in a robe, confused. When he heard what was happening, he rushed back into our house with Uncle Jeff. They found Owen in our living room, just standing there, knife still in his hand. Mr. Dalton shouted his name, then ran over and yanked the knife out of his grip. He didn't say a word. He just dragged Owen out the door back into their house. Uncle Jeff was furious. He told Mr. Dalton if they weren't out of Brook Hollow by the end of the week, there'd be consequences. The police showed up a few minutes later. They didn't take Owen to jail, though. They said they were taking him to get help. Some kind of facility, I think. The next day, the Daltons started packing. By the end of the week, they were gone. No goodbye, no explanation. Just gone. We never found out where they moved to. And I've never seen Owen again, but sometimes I still get this weird feeling. Like someone's watching, especially when I'm near a window. Okay, so I don't tell this story often. Not because I've forgotten it, but because it still freaks me out even now, years later. But if you're into creepy stuff, real stories, not ghost tales or urban legends, then buckle up. This one actually happened to me. It was the fall of 2018. I was 19 back then, living in a small town called Willow Creek, one of those places with lots of quiet streets, big oak trees, and neighbors who always wave at each other. Not much happens there. It's peaceful, which made what happened all the more disturbing. At the time, I was staying with my cousin Mason in a 2-story house near the edge of town. Our aunt, who owned the place, had gone on a long trip to Arizona, so it was just the two of us for a few weeks. We were both in college, and weekends meant only one thing: going out to Stoney's, the local bar where everyone our age hung out. Cheap drinks, loud music, sticky floors. You get the picture. That Saturday night started like any other. Mason, a few of our friends, and I got ready, blasted music while changing clothes, and pre-gamed a little before heading out. I wasn't looking to get too drunk, just enough to let loose. I remember putting on this oversized black hoodie and some jeans. Nothing fancy, just something comfortable. When we got to Stoney's, it was packed. The usual crowd was there. People dancing, flirting, laughing too loud, trying to shout over the music. I stuck close to Mason and his friends most of the night. I remember sipping on something fruity, maybe a vodka cranberry, and talking to a couple of guys who came up to us. They seemed harmless, at least that's what I thought. Somewhere around midnight, things started to get fuzzy, not like a blackout drunk, but just hazy. I wasn't keeping track of time. I vaguely remember someone brushing up against me too many times near the bar. There was this one guy. He had a thick jacket on, dark eyes, and he kept staring. He didn't say much, just watched. But in the moment, I brushed it off. Lots of people act weird in bars. Eventually, I got tired. Mason wanted to stay longer, but I told him I'd head out early. Our house was only a 15-minute walk from the bar, so it wasn't a big deal. I'd done that walk a dozen times before. I remember stepping outside into the chilly night air, the sound of muffled music behind me fading away as I walked down the street. The sidewalks were damp from earlier rain, and the streetlights cast this kind of yellow, sickly glow that made the trees look like they were moving. It was quiet and too quiet. No cars, no people. Just the sound of my footsteps and the occasional rustle of wind through leaves. I finally got to our house, climbed the steps to the front porch, and reached under the fake ceramic frog near the door. That's where we kept the spare key. Had done for years. It never felt risky before. Everyone in Willow Creek knew each other. Who would be snooping around? I slipped inside, locked the door behind me, and headed upstairs to my room without turning on any lights. I was too tired to care. Didn't change. Didn't brush my teeth. I just collapsed onto my bed, phone in hand, and started texting Mason to make sure he'd get home safe. That's when things got weird. A few minutes after I got under the covers, I heard the front door open. At first, I didn't think much of it. Mason probably got a ride back or decided to call it a night too. But then I checked my texts, and I had one from him that just said, "How'd you ditch that guy?" I stared at it, confused. I typed back, "What guy?" Mason replied almost instantly, "That weird dude who kept following you at the bar. Thought he was gonna ask you for your number or something." I sat up in bed, the tiredness suddenly gone. I didn't even remember that guy leaving the bar. I thought he'd stayed behind. Meanwhile, I could hear someone downstairs. Cabinets opening, a soft clink of something on the counter. Footsteps moving around slowly like they didn't want to be heard. I texted Mason again. "Are you home?" And he responded, "Nope, still at Stoney's." My stomach dropped. That's when I heard the stairs creak, one slow step at a time. Someone was coming up. I stared at my bedroom door, frozen, my phone gripped in both hands. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. Then, silence. And then, the door handle turned. My bedroom door opened just a crack. It was pitch black outside the room, and I couldn't see who or what was there. I said in a shaky voice, "Mason?" Nothing. The door quietly shut, but I didn't hear anyone walk away. No footsteps. No creaking stairs. Just silence. My heart was racing. I picked up my phone and texted Mason one more time. "Are you messing with me?" "Please tell me it's you," he replied. "What?" "No, still here." "Why do you keep opening the front door?" That was it. I knew something was seriously wrong. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. My fingers were shaking so badly I could barely hit the numbers. The operator answered, calm and steady, asking what was happening. I whispered that I thought someone was in my house, that they might be outside my room. She told me to stay on the line. I reached over to my nightstand and switched on my lamp. And there he was. A man was standing in the far corner of my room, near the door, just standing there, not moving, watching me. He wasn't tall, maybe 5'9", but stocky. He wore a dark hoodie pulled over his head. I couldn't see his face clearly, just the reflection of his eyes catching the light. Wide, unblinking. I screamed. Loud. The kind of scream that rips out of your throat before you even know what's happening. The 911 operator kept asking, "Ma'am, what's happening? What do you see?" But I could barely speak. The man didn't say a word. He turned, opened the door, and bolted down the hall. I heard him crash down the stairs and tear out the front door. The sound of it slamming shut echoed through the house. I stayed on the line with the operator the whole time, shaking, crying, barely able to speak. She stayed calm, kept talking to me, told me the officers were on their way. I sat there in the corner of my bed, hugging my knees, lamp still on, eyes locked on that door like he might come back any second. When the police arrived, I felt this mix of relief and pure exhaustion. I was still kind of drunk, so my memory was a mess, but I told them everything I could. One of the officers, a tall guy named Officer Larkin, went to check the front door. When he came back, he was holding something, a key. My stomach turned. He said he found it still stuck in the outside of the front door lock. It was the spare key, the one from under the frog. The man had used it to get inside, which meant he had followed me home. I watched where I got the key, waited for the right moment. He might have been standing outside while I was texting Mason, or worse, already inside. The officer told me they'd patrol our street all night just in case. He said to find a new hiding spot for the key. Or better yet, don't hide one at all. The next day I told Mason and our friends what happened. They all looked horrified. One girl, Lila, said she remembered the guy too. Said he kept hanging around me all night. Even when I moved to different parts of the bar, I had been so out of it I never noticed. After that night, I didn't go back to Stoney's for a long, long time. We stopped keeping spare keys outside, and I got in the habit of double-checking every lock before I went to bed. Even now, years later, I still sometimes wake up in the middle of the night, sure I heard someone in the hallway. People always ask me what I think he wants. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe he just wanted to scare me. Maybe worse. I try not to think about it too much, but sometimes